Welcome to Ignition Leadership Podcast, leading with fire and building with purpose. All information and opinions are of the hosts and guests and are not affiliated with any organization. Here are your hosts, Jamie and Bob Howarth.
Welcome, listeners. We are your hosts, Jamie Howarth
and Bob Howarth.
And we do these podcasts every couple weeks because we want to give our listeners a little bit of tidbits to take back to the firehouse and be able to discuss. It's just for thoughtful conversations at the table when they're having dinner or when they have some downtime. And I think that is really the goal that we're trying to do. And when I get feedback from our listeners, I feel like we are hitting the mark with that. So we're here to give you just some perspective on what we see from various leadership perspectives that we've experienced. And you can take the concepts and frame them or put them into your experiences that you've had. So whether you've had 1 year on the job or you've had 30 years on the job, you should be able to apply the concepts to where you were at in your career.
It's just another tool in life's toolbox.
Yeah.
Every time you get a new tool, it takes a little while to figure out how to use it. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to give you little tools, small snippets of those tools, and let you figure out how to use it, if it's going to work for you or not.
Yeah. So we did miss a week because we took a much needed adult vacation to Mexico.
Yes.
Where I do not like the sand on the beach. So we laid by the pool. I also don't like the creatures in the ocean. So we really did relax. We made it a point to not do work stuff and things that were related to work, because I usually feel like I'm wasting time if I'm not being productive. For example, I'm listening to a podcast, and if it's not about the fire service or not about leadership, I just feel like, oh man, I could be using my time more productively. And so I really never have downtime from it. And it's funny because when we were there, I was listening to true crime podcasts because that's just something I'm interested in, but I never really listen to because I always think I can use my time more wisely. But then, of course, in the airport on the way out, we pick up Yankees ball caps and I pick up a leadership book.
Right.
So you know what? We made it through the whole vacation. And leadership books pertain to us, even if it's not fire service specific. And I actually think a lot of those concepts apply to us as well. And we should be more open-minded where we get our information when it comes to leadership.
Just to give everybody a little more perspective, as a retiree, it's been almost 6 years since I retired. The last 10 years of my career was 24/7 having a phone attached to me. Vacations, no vacations, no matter what. It was always available by phone or by email. And it took me 6 years after retirement to go on a vacation and leave my work phone at home and never look at my work email the whole time I was gone. So for those of you that are getting ready to retire, it takes a while to break the habits.
I was so surprised that you left the whole phone at home.
The whole phone.
And I did get one text message and a very small thing that I dealt with, which it wasn't a big deal. And I don't want to leave my people hanging either. I was off for almost 20 days. So, that's a long time to go out without somebody being able to make decisions. And the fire department is a 24/7 gig. You can't stop. It doesn't stop because you take a vacation. So I really am fortunate in my position that the other chiefs that I work with above me and my peers are proactive and knowing when we're on vacation or when we're doing something, and they pick up the slack.
So this is going to be good. This little conversation right here is going to lead us right into what our podcast is about, because I know I've heard it when I was in the fire service still. I'm sure that you hear it. You tell somebody you're going on vacation and, well, if you need me, call me. Or if you need me, email me or text me. And they say, you're on vacation. Why do you even look at that stuff? You look at it from a different way than they do. As a firefighter, they may not care whether or not anything happens at work, but they're only responsible for themselves while they're away. You're still responsible for a lot. So it leads us right into what we're about to talk about.
So our topic today, I've been really excited about this one because it has come up quite a bit, both in conversations with people with less ranks than me and also people with more rank than me. And that shows you how prominent this discussion is. And what we're going to discuss today is frame of reference. And for when you put that into the fire service, it's the perspective or viewpoint from which leaders and firefighters interpret situations, make decisions, understand each other's actions. The concept is crucial because it shapes how leaders and frontline firefighters perceive policies, challenges, and the realities of the job. And I really think that as you get more responsibility, your frame of reference really does change. As you get more experience, your frame of reference changes. And I noticed this has just really been weighing on me a lot lately in the position that I'm in now, because I'm sitting in a different seat. When I was a backstep firefighter, some of the rookies that I have on my social media, they post these pictures of just sitting in the back, and a video of just going down the road with the breeze blowing and like not a care in the world and so excited. And it just makes me so nostalgic I just remember the sights, the smells, the feeling of being in the back and yep, I'm just going to pull a line and I'm going to go do all the fun stuff. And I don't even have to do a report when I'm finished.
Right. You go back to the station, you laugh, you talk about it, you get a shower and the officer's still sitting in their office writing out the report, doing the paperwork. Yep.
And making sure that all of the equipment is put back together, making sure that our safety checks are done, both with people, making sure that they're getting cleaned up and their hoods exchanged and all that stuff. So a frame of reference of a firefighter is going to be different, even a rookie firefighter, let's say, than a 10-year firefighter or a 20-year firefighter who has more experience. And it really is the viewpoint from the seat which you sit.
Yes.
And I just have felt lately the most that I have noticed that in my entire career.
It's not just the seat that you sit in, it's also the people that you answer to. Your frame of reference changes when you're a firefighter answering to a lieutenant than when you're a battalion or division chief answering to an assistant chief.
Yeah.
And that assistant chief is their leadership, the people that are telling them what to do, are responsible for hundreds of thousands of constituents. So it's not just the seat you sit in, but it's who are you representing when you make those decisions?
Absolutely. I do think that we have a mission statement for a reason. And I do think we all have the same mission. It's just the responsibility of that mission is different depending on what seat you sit in.
Right.
So I was a frontline supervisor in the front of the fire engine. Our dog is gagging in the background.
He's good now.
I don't know if you can hear that or not, but thanks for coming to the show, Jackson. Yeah, so I rode the front seat of a fire engine for well over a decade. And the decisions that I made riding the front seat, for example, I used to go up to the window of the battalion chief all the time. I just loved to go up to the window and tell them stuff that I saw, or, hey, I want to go do this or that. And it was like the worst possible thing to do to the battalion chief.
Right. Now that you're sitting in that car, you don't want anybody coming to your window.
No.
Right.
Yes. You run the risk of missing critical transmissions. And I just did not know how much that affected them until it was me sitting in the seat. And, now I tell the firefighters that work for me, if it's important, say it on the radio. If it's not important, tell me later, because one, if it is important, you need to say it so everybody can hear it. And that way I'm not trying to relay third person information where somebody comes to my window and say, hey, I saw this on the Charlie side. This is what we have. And then, okay, now I'm taking that information and I'm putting it out on the radio, and I may have missed some stuff because I have a lot of stuff going on. So my frame of reference as a battalion chief, I think this is the biggest frame of reference that has changed for me. And I also think it has given me a significant amount of respect for the people that I answer to. And I want to make sure that the people that I am leading understand the why behind what I'm doing. I want to make sure that they understand you're not going to see everything that I see because you're not seeing it from my vantage point.
Right.
And that's really hard because you have to get them to trust you in those situations, that you're making these decisions. And at this point in time, I may not be able to tell you the why behind it, but you have to go with it anyway and trust that there's a bigger picture.
Right. Trust that there is a reason for what you're doing. It's not just because, well, I'm the chief and that's what I want to do.
Right.
I'm the chief and that's what I want to do. It gets people in trouble.
Well, when you're a firefighter, you do think like, oh, this lieutenant, this is such a dumb role. I can't believe they're making us do, X, Y, and Z, insert whatever here. And that lieutenant's like, well, yes, I am making you pull the lines every single shift because it's important that we can pull these lines efficiently. And the firefighter's like, I'm good at it. It's fine. And this is just one example, where I feel like as you get more responsibility, the more you understand the whole picture.
Right. And I also think that it is a two-way street because there are times when the perspective of the lower ranking individual can also be important to the higher ranking individual. For example, a lot of it has to do with training and experience. I distinctly remember a call many years ago where a group of people were allegedly exposed to a chemical and they were having these reactions to the chemical. I was on the hazmat team at the time. We went to the hospital. We did a lot of testing. We did a lot of interviews. And we came to find out that it really was not a chemical. It was a heat-related illness that everyone was suffering from, and drinking from the same water was causing people to be sick. And the division chief at the time said, well, let's just make everybody comfortable and decon them so that they feel like we did something. And I told the division chief, I think that's a really bad idea. You have people that have gone to multiple hospitals, and if we decon and somebody else doesn't, then we're going to create a huge mess because the media is looking at this, everybody's there. So let's just do what's right and not do anything. Just say what it was, say that it's a heat-related injury, say that this is the cause of it, and that there's no chemicals involved in it, and go home. And after he thought about it, looking at it from the way I was looking at it, he agreed, and that's exactly what we did. So in that case, I had a different lens than he did because of my training and knowing what was going to happen.
Yeah, and the trust has to go, it does have to go both ways.
Absolutely.
Of course. And I think that's why you as an officer or you as a leader, period, have to get out there and know your people.
Right.
This is where it becomes a challenge is, for me, when I was a lieutenant, I had 5 people that I was in charge of that were on my shift that I saw every 4th day, and I got to know them extremely well. And then becoming a captain, I still knew my shift really well, but then introduced with these other shifts that I was in charge of. And it was not as easy to get to know them as well because they were not on the same shift.
Right.
And now I have 45 people that I supervise, and there is no way that I'm going to be able to know all of those people intimately. There's just not enough time in the day. And if you think about it, division chief has an entire shift of people. The assistant chief has 1,000 people.
Right.
And the way that you can go about learning those people is truly through the chain of command. Because as the battalion chief, I get to know my officers intimately, and I get to understand them, and I get to explain to them the why. And then they are responsible for sharing that frame of reference with their firefighters and the people that are under their command. But if I, as a battalion chief, try to do that with every person under my command, there's just no way.
Yeah, you don't have time to do it with everybody.
It's ineffective. I'm just not with them all the time. I do think it is important that I'm involved with their training and that I'm there. They see my face, that I do have interactions with them, but it's not the same level of interaction as it is with my officers.
And I think it's also important that you have, and again, you said it comes through the chain of command.
Yeah.
It goes both up and down in the chain of command, where that officer in the station who has a crew of, let's just say 6 people, that officer knows those 6 people pretty well. They know their experience, they know their history, they know a lot about them.
Yeah.
And maybe one person has a unique experience. Maybe, just spitballing off the top of my head, maybe one person at one time was a heavy equipment mechanic and worked on a lot of hydraulics.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to know that. And then you're going to say, as the lieutenant, to the chief when he comes in, hey, did you know, Joe over there, he used to work on heavy equipment. He knows all that. The battalion chief will remember that. And then the battalion chief might even say something. And on that day, when you have that one call where they're caught in something and that person speaks up and says, you're not going to want to do that. You're going to want to do it this way.
Yeah.
In your mind, you're going to go, why?
Yeah.
That's you asking the why. And it's a smart thing to do.
And even when you broaden that lens, and you may not know all of those things, I am relying on the officer to know their people well.
Right.
And my shift commander is relying on me to know my officers well and to know what their strengths and weaknesses are to ensure that we are operating effectively and we're operating efficiently on the fire ground. And I do think it is important that we focus on being able to tell the why to avoid some of that miscommunication. And one of the challenges in the fire service and in leadership in general is that you have that frame of reference. And let's say the firefighter rank or the officer rank, they almost feel detached from you with day-to-day decision making because you have to go make those decisions. And it kind of breaks, it causes like a break or a stress in the relationship with the officer or the firefighters, because a lot of leaders are not circling back around to the why that they made the decisions and trying to be able to show it from their vantage point.
Right.
And I'm a firm believer there is a time and a place for this, because the fire ground is not the time to be asking me, well, why am I throwing the ladder here?
Right.
That's the time, unless it's a safety issue, to follow the chain of command, to ensure that the command and control is effective, and to be sure that we're carrying out the job well.
The why is always important.
Yeah.
When you get the why, may not be as important.
Yes. So this is what has changed for me. And this is why I think it's such a huge difference. It's just clicked so much for me lately, I feel like, and the battalion chief level is when my superiors do make a decision and I don't understand why, I really try to put myself in their shoes and say, okay, you've made decisions where people may not understood why you've made them at that level. However, I have to trust that they are making the decision based on information that they have at the time that I may not be privy to.
Right.
And that's fine. But you have to build that relationship to ensure that trust goes both ways. And I can tell you one that did get a little mixed up when it came to staffing. I don't like to put 2 new rookies on an ambulance together. I would prefer that somebody who has cleared their rookie book is on the ambulance with them, has a little bit of experience. I just seen what happens sometimes when you put 2 rookies on an ambulance together with no supervision, and it's no fault of their own. They don't have the decision-making experience yet. Right. And they just don't have the experience, period. Even if they have previous experience, that's helpful. But like in our jurisdiction, they lack the knowledge of the hospitals and those things.
Times.
Yeah, and it gets them in trouble.
Right, it does.
So I did have an officer who questioned why I didn't put the 2 on the piece of apparatus together. And the answer that I got back was, or that I got from them was, well, I see other people doing it.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I don't feel that it is in the best interest. I think that it increases our chance of having NVCs and collisions. I think that it can cause issues with protocol. And I'm able to do staffing to avoid it. That's what I'm going to do.
But simple and effective well, I see other people do it. Well, what time do you get to work? You get to work at 6 o'clock? Well, I see other people that get here at 6:30. Why don't you do that? And it's what's convenient for them sometimes. But when you explain the why, they have to do that 180 and stand in your shoes and look at it.
Yeah, but it's also my job to the best of my ability, give them the why, especially in that situation, because that's not
It's not
emergent.
emergency.
It's
Yeah.
not an emergent
You
situation.
can give them the why.
Yeah, so it's super easy to say this is the reason why. You know, we have an increased risk of brand new drivers having motor vehicle collisions. We have an increased risk of, you know, protocol violations, and it's just more comfortable for them to have somebody that has more experience with them when they don't have a supervisor with them.
So I'll tell you something that I found to be very effective over the years when you have that situation. You give them the why, but you don't just tell them the why. You ask them questions to show them that they already know the why and let them work through it
Yeah.
as you're doing that. That's very effective for another person. Like simply saying something like, well, do you think there's more accidents with two rookies or with a rookie and an experienced person? That officer is going to know, well, there's more with two rookies. They've just in their head said, okay, I'm starting to see her why.
Yeah, and being able to, the other thing is being able to accept the answer even when you don't like it.
Yep.
And that is a frame of reference also that comes along with leadership. You know, when stuff gets implemented, there are times that I don't immediately know the why behind it. I feel like especially operationally, we have training bulletins that come out that really explain why we do things. And I think it's so helpful and supporting me so that I can support my officers to put into play what we should be doing. But it is important that I'm like, okay, I think I understand it. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to do the best I can to implement it. And when the time is right, I'll call my shift commander. I call him all the time. Like, hey, what is the scenario behind this? The other thing I feel like people should understand is that it is easier to make a decision or to see a decision when the weight of that decision is not on your shoulders.
Correct.
And, you know, they say, well, that's an easy fix. You can just do this. And it's not an easy fix because you have to consider, like you said, constituents. You have to consider the public. From the battalion level, for me, I have to consider other officers. I have to consider the volunteers. I have to consider mutual aid. I have to consider all of these things when I make my decision. The weight of that decision is on me. And as a firefighter, you may not see it from that perspective because you haven't experienced the weight of that on your shoulders.
And you may not even understand that there may be another department close to you that is doing something similar to what you're doing, but maybe the people see it as better. And when they see it as better and you try to make a change, then they go, well, why aren't you doing it like they're doing it? Because they seem to be doing it better. Perfect example right now is there is a local department that is very heavy into the electric vehicles. At some point, that tide could turn for other departments to say, well, why are you still buying gasoline powered equipment? That other department is buying electric powered equipment. And the person at the firefighter level that's making a decision, we should change from explorers to expeditions, doesn't see the other ramifications that are happening.
Right.
Doesn't hear the calls to the county executive's office.
Right.
You know, doesn't hear the person that stands up at the council meeting and says, you're ruining the environment, whether they're right or not. They don't see that.
Right. And there has to be a balance with the decision-making process. And I feel that is why it's so important that we're able to respect the frame of reference. And we also have to bridge the gap when it comes to that. For example, when somebody has made a mistake, let's say a new firefighter, a new officer has made a mistake, heck, a new battalion chief has made a mistake, right? And you go to discuss it with them, you cannot discuss it with them with your years of experience.
Right.
And with your frame of reference, because they don't have that. And it is important as leaders that you not only, you know, that you're going, well, you know, you don't understand because you don't have the weight of the world on your shoulders. But you also have to understand that from their perspective as a new driver, a new officer, that they do feel like they have the weight of the world on their shoulders. And we need to take a step back and go, okay, they did make a mistake, but they're also brand new. It was their first fire. What mistakes did you make on your first fire? And not just grill them and talk down to them, especially because they wouldn't have done what a 20-year firefighter or driver would have done. Well, they're not a 20-year driver.
And you weigh their mistake also.
Of course.
If their mistake is something that didn't have anything to do with the outcome, you can treat
Yes.
that a little bit differently than a mistake that may affect the outcome.
Absolutely. Safety is
Yeah.
a high priority.
Not just safety though, even if it's not something that was unsafe, but just affected the outcome,
Yeah.
that's still an important thing to talk to them about and give them the why. And you give them the why with your experience, but you don't hold them to the same level as your experience.
Yes. And you expect them to perform at the level or at the bar that we have set for officers, for battalion chiefs. You expect them to meet the minimum standard of that. When they are new, that is what you should expect of them, is the minimum standard. And then as they grow, you grow with them, but you still have to have those hard conversations with them. And people have to have hard conversations with me. You know, it just is a circular thing that happens. I know that I'm sure when you get up into the higher levels, the chief has to have a hard conversation with county executives or
Right.
with constituents or at those council meetings. I have never been in that seat. It looks grueling to me. I don't think that's for me, but I do think that it's important that the leadership is able to take that on and not shy away from it. And I do feel, at least in my organization, I feel like we do a good job of trying to work towards that frame of reference, and we are able to show up to work and we're able to provide that service to the community members. And we try to do that 360 view of ourselves and of the people that work for us or with us.
And you know, it was interesting. You and I both heard somebody speaking a couple days ago, in reference to a small department that they really needed a technical rescue team. That was the
Oh yeah,
that was the view that this firefighter had. We really need a technical
Right.
rescue team.
right.
We need a technical rescue team. Well, how many stations did you have? You had 2. Well, if you have a technical rescue team with 2 stations, who's going to do all the other stuff while you're technical rescuing? And you have to consider, when they bring that to their administration and their administration says, no, we're not putting that money out. We're not doing the training for that. We're not doing this, because there are local places that can help us with
Right.
that. There are all of these. And all that a firefighter sometimes sees is, I want to make it better,
Right.
but it's better at that level. It's not better at an upper level.
Right. And sometimes we are not able to see the priorities that have been set at those higher levels. You know, that's one thing I love about the fire department. Most of us are go-getters.
Yeah.
And we do want to change the world, and we want to make it a better place, and we want to change the culture. We want to move the fire service forward. But it can get frustrating when you are faced with what you consider adversity from your seat, right? Well, man, this is a really good idea, and I can't believe that they're not doing it. Not recognizing the cost behind it. Or, you know, it's also from it's almost like you're narrow framed, right?
Mhm.
You're not able to see that bigger picture because, for example, I'm a paramedic. So I see things as a paramedic from a paramedic point of view. And we do get tunnel vision when it comes to that. And so I think, well, we really need this new whatever. And the department goes, I mean, really, in the grand scheme of things, we run 100,000 calls a year. We probably would use that tool maybe 50 times a year, maybe even way less than that. And then they have to weigh the cost versus the benefit of it. Maybe it's worth getting it for 50 times a year. Maybe it's
Right.
worth having it for one time a year.
It may be worth it for public perception. It may be worth it for the amount of money you save. It may be worth it for what you protect. Remember,
Yes, that too.
what's the mission? The mission is to protect life and property.
Right.
Okay. So protecting life and protecting property that has to be weighed in when you make these decisions. And I don't want to buy X tool because it's not going to do anything to protect any more lives. It only changes the way we do something. Well, they might not want to spend that money on that to make additional or spend additional money on things that preserve
priority.
property or preserve, yeah.
Well, yeah, that are higher priority, and that is quite the balance. And I do think that is something that captains even see, especially in volunteer career stations, because the volunteers do have additional money that they can use, and together collaboratively, they have to work to figure out what is in the best interest of the station and how they spend that money. So the captains, at least in my organization, they do get to see that perspective and have some buy-in with that to learn the process of seeing the bigger picture, because now in a volunteer career station, you have to consider the volunteers.
Right.
And it's important that they are involved and included, and that our process is made for them as well. And I can tell you one thing that I am guilty of is, and I try so hard with training, and I really need to get better at this. Like, this is a fault that I can see of myself. I do training every shift. My battalion does training every shift. It's not always battalion level training, but there is something on our training schedule that we all do. We all do the same thing unless there's something specific that a station has to work on that's separate from whatever we're doing that day. And oftentimes I fail to make the time of the training in the evening time when it's best suited for the volunteers.
Sure.
And that's something I know, this is just an example that I have to start to improve on and really put that into consideration, because from my viewpoint, they are a part of the organization. They need to be included in it. And that has to be a part of my decision-making process. But a lieutenant or a firefighter may not see that and be like, yeah, whatever, like, we're here, we're doing the training that, we'll have it at 10 o'clock in the morning because that's what is most convenient for us. But does that really grow my battalion as a whole with volunteer leadership and responsiveness?
So it's also, if you're going to criticize the volunteers, and we all know that there's a lot of criticism about volunteers. You can see Facebook pages about it. You can see social media about it, all of that. If you're going to criticize the volunteers, before you do that, you have to give them the equal opportunity to receive that same training. And
Right.
you're seeing that, and you didn't see that from the same view that you had before. And now you're seeing, well, maybe I need to make training at a different time so that we can.
Well, at my other levels, it was just not a consideration because I wasn't responsible for it. So as a lieutenant, I wasn't responsible for that. So I'm like, yeah, whatever, we'll have 10 o'clock in the morning. But even at the station level, we have a lot of station level trainings. The lieutenant and the captain, they do have control over that, where they can change the time.
Sure.
And that is just taking into consideration. And the firefighter goes, oh, I don't want to do this after dinner. Like, who wants to do training after dinner? Nobody.
Right.
And then that's when it's important that the captain communicates with them and says, look, we are a combination department, we're a combination station, and we need to put the effort forward to include the volunteers and ensure that they're operating at the same level we are. We have to provide that opportunity to them. And, as you grow in the ranks and or experience, right? Because you don't necessarily have to have a rank to be a leader. You just don't. And, my firefighters are leaders in the station, especially my senior firefighters. And from their frame of reference, they may see things differently that they can offer feedback for. And one of the most important things, and it's a big breakdown in the fire service, is the communication that goes back and forth up and down the chain and with the community and with volunteers and within the station, within the battalion, is that if you have that breakdown of communication, it's really going to cause a rift. Because one, they can't see it from their frame of reference. And two, you're not communicating with them as to why you're doing it.
And they also have to have a different frame of reference than they had 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yes.
I started at a volunteer station 35 years ago. And that volunteer station was very community based. It was, their frame of reference was what's right for our community.
Yeah.
And as things evolved, now, especially with AVL, their community is now anywhere in the county because they could be getting fuel, they could be doing
Right.
something, and all of a sudden they're no longer in their community because they're closer.
Right.
And they have to change their frame of reference that it's not just about your area, it's now about a much broader area.
Yes. And just the evolution of the fire service period, I've been in the fire service career and volunteer almost 25 years. And so much has changed in that 25 years. And I do believe that your frame of reference has to change with the times.
Yes.
And with science, I'm a big fan of science. I'm a big fan of learning from the fire service's mistakes, from line of duty deaths. I think all of that stuff is important, that we grow and move forward. But if we choose to ignore it and we choose not to bring that into our frame, it's going to set us back instead of moving us forward.
So you just said you have to evolve with times, with the change, with the science. And I completely 100% agree. And it's very important that as firefighters, as emergency personnel, we also evolve. The police department had to do it with bulletproof vests. They had to evolve. A lot of people wouldn't wear them. We don't need that. Now, nobody would go out without it.
Yeah.
The fire service, how many times have you heard the statement, well, if we put sprinklers in everything, we'll be out of business?
Yes.
So, and I'm going to use this department's name because they've said this in the media and everything. Prince George's County Fire Department has had sprinklers longer than anybody in the state of Maryland. And their fire duty is still as high or higher than almost everywhere else.
Yeah.
It doesn't put you out of business, but it does save lives, and that's your mission.
Right.
So people have to evolve with that.
Agreed. I do think that we have to remember what we're here for. And we have to trust the process. And as leaders, we have to do our due diligence to ensure that we recognize the level of experience that people have, ensuring that we are communicating at what we can communicate, and what we can't communicate. Hopefully you've been communicating enough that they trust you when you can't communicate stuff with them. When there is something that has come up that has to remain confidential. And you just say, look, I can't give you all the details. You just have to trust me on this one. And they trust you. And, there are decisions made every day. I get them in my email, or I get various things that change. And sometimes I don't fully understand them right in that moment. But I trust the people making those decisions probably have more information than I do. And I have to trust that process. And that's something that I want to challenge the fire service and challenge our listeners, is the next time you have a decision that's made that you don't understand, or you think that it's stupid, just consider that they have more information than you do. And they are making a decision that is broader based and that has the priorities that's in the best interest of those that they are responsible for.
Here's the biggest takeaway I want to have everybody understand. No matter your rank, no matter your position, no matter your importance, no matter anything, the view from your eyes is not the same as the view from the person next to you.
Right.
And you have to think about what that person is thinking, is using for a reference, is experienced with, and don't just automatically dismiss another person's view because it's not the same view as yours. Listen, take a couple minutes and listen. And I challenge our listeners to think about that. And if you think that anybody is seeing it the exact same way as you do, you need to go and look at things like the 9/11 Memorial, where they asked 1,000 people, or however many it was, what color was the sky on 9/11? And there are how many different colors of blue?
I think it's like 2,200 and some for all of
and
those that perished.
Everybody saw a different color blue.
Yeah.
So it was the same sky, but it was a different view.
Absolutely.
So that's what I challenge our listeners to, is take a couple minutes, look the other person in the eye, think about what they're doing, and try to see it from their shoes. It'll help you in the long run.
And have a hard conversation.
Yes.
hard conversations is when growth happens.
Yep.
And it sucks. I'm on the business end of them, but I just know, I think to myself, okay, this is where the growth happens. You just have to deal with it. You have to suck it up. You have to face it. And you have to have some humility.
Yeah.
And understanding that you don't know everything. And you have to trust the people that are in the position to make those decisions from every rank.
And it goes a long way for you to say, I was wrong. When you say that, it's very important. When you're wrong, say you're wrong.
Yeah.
Have that humility and that ability to do that.
And if you don't know why you were wrong, because I will tell you, and I know we're going to wrap this up, sometimes I don't know what I did that was wrong.
Right.
And it has to be pointed out to me.
But once it's pointed out to you and you see it from their shoes, most of the time you go, ooh, I shouldn't have done
Well,
it
yeah,
that way.
that is where you have a little bit more experience than I do. And I'm going to take your experience and I'm going to learn from it.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it can be tricky.
Yeah, and people have to have open minds, open ears, and open hearts.
Yep.
So I think that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. We did miss one of our episodes, but we were on a much needed relaxation vacation. I'm actually happy to be back. I'm excited to go to work tomorrow because it's been a while since I've been there. So I'm looking forward to seeing the guys and getting back into training. I have battalion level training tomorrow. So I'm excited to get back into it.
Yeah, it's nice to be back, but it was really nice to be on vacation.
It was, yeah. All right. Well, we will see you in a couple Tuesdays from now. Just go out, take some information, sit back and have thoughtful conversations at the firehouse. And just remember to have an open mind and have those hard conversations.
Take care, everybody.